Good morning, everyone. My name is Fenady from STR. My apologies for not being able to join the Meet the Experts Hanoi edition, but nonetheless, I have pulled some quick data dashes to set the discussion for this morning. So the key question is, will it get better next year? What data points may be useful for you to shed light on this key question? Now, this is a satellite imaging of occupancy. Vietnam is still in the red zone if you would look at it from a recovery state of occupancy, because what we're looking at is from August of 2019 versus August of 2022. But of course, what we have seen is that year to date occupancy is approaching on a pre pandemic levels for most in the region. Now, by the end of quarter three, many markets have already surpassed 2019 levels. And one of that will be Jakarta, which is very, very close to recovery. Now, clearly, it's a very domestic driven market. So they're winning against other countries. Now, with Hanoi and Kuala Lumpur are still on the biggest dip in occupancy recovery because they were once on a better position of August of 2019. But at least this will give you an indication of, let's say, for Hanoi, how far it is in terms of recovery state moving towards 2019. Now, the next slide that I'm going to show to you will be talking about the Rev Bar movements. Now, this Rev Bar movements is a comparison for other key cities in Asia Pacific. So let's look at this like a competition. So what we are seeing here are the growth trajectories of the different markets in Asia Pacific. If they're moving towards the right, that means they are growing in occupancy. And if they are going up, that means they are moving towards the average daily rate index. Now, yes, this is also similar to what property level revenue experts are using when they're looking at the strategies if they are achieving the desired RevPAR for their properties. So they're looking at the growth rate or the occupancy growth. So what we can see here, Hanoi, unfortunately, is still on the lowest point. Well, that also includes Bangkok. So don't fret because remember, Bangkok and Hanoi and Tokyo, even they're on the lowest point here, on the lowest left-hand corner, they were once the biggest markets that are growing in demand year on year before the pandemic happened. Now, what we are seeing here is the Southeast Asia occupancy movement. By September preliminary data, Vietnam is still the lowest demand among the different countries. But will it mean that the rate is also lowest for the Vietnam market? So the next slide will show us how is Vietnam moving if it's moving on a right trajectory when it comes to rate growth. Now, as you can see here, we compare Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Singapore. Vietnam is obviously not in the lowest point, but what we can see here is it's going to the right direction. So it's moving aggressively towards 2019 levels. Now, let's look closely into the different submarkets of Vietnam. Basically, what we can see here between the beach and the beach destinations and the cities, the beach destinations are still holding the recovery growth for the total country. But take note that we are taking also in consideration that Vietnam is quite sporadic, so different submarkets have a different dynamics. So comparing Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh, for example, Hanoi is slower in terms of recovery growth as compared to Ho Chi Minh. This is based on September data. When we look at the beach destinations, obviously it's still very much on the pressure side because we have seen that Nha Trang is still way below almost 60%. Da Nang is still a little bit higher than the Nha Trang, but still that's still a big dip in compared to 2019 levels. Now, let's look at average daily rate. Hanoi clearly wins on the rate recoveries, even if the demand is weaker. Based on our other analysis on class movement, it is the higher tier hotels that are actually holding on to the rate. Hence, the rate growth are much faster on the luxury in the upper upscale hotels. So this is the interesting view of the movement of that different class. So like I mentioned earlier, you have these three buckets. The upper upscale, the luxury are highest in terms of recovery, meaning a lot of revenue managers, revenue directors, and the great GMs are now yielding in terms of the rate, because that they have seen that demand is slowly picking up also in the higher tier segment. Now, development is really off the charts for Vietnam. I couldn't highlight this enough from my few weeks ago the session in Ho Chi Minh. I've also shown the same thing, but based on our AMPM data, the latest information that I pulled up this week, Vietnam is actually already reaching up to 90,000 hotels in the pipeline and counting. We're still not we have not factored in those independent hotels that are also opening in the next 5 years. Now, what is important to take note is that based on our data, the pipeline growth is biggest in the upper upscale and upscale class. Now, before I end the session, because like I mentioned, this is a quick data dashes of information, I just want to give you a little bit of update first of what we are doing for the Vietnam market. Like I mentioned earlier, I think there are key data points that I feel that will be very useful for you to be able to kind of shed light of the key question is how are you going to perform for next year? So what are we working on? So what I have here is a forward looking data for the Bangkok market. And what I wanted to tell you is that we are working on getting this for Vietnam as well. We are hoping the platform is already available. We are hoping to open the report by next year, probably quarter 1 or quarter 2 for Vietnam market, to be able to provide you with the occupancy on the books up to 365 days. And not just that, is that will also help key markets to be able to compare their performance against their other competitions. So how will this help you? So what I'm showing you here is the latest information on South Thailand, and just to really just point it out that this is a regional competition on the Vietnam beach destination. You may not find the data useful, but I just want to share this to you that if you have portfolio in this beach destination, you are up against South Thailand, for example. And what we have seen is towards the end of the year, by December, they're already reaching over 40% in occupancy on the books. So go back to your own data in your properties, especially if you're in the beach destination, and look at your comparison and compare this between your actual occupancy or your business on the books. So before I end, let's talk about a little bit of forecast. So it's not going to be something rosy, because the assumption is what if China won't open? But if they do open for first quarter or second quarter, based on tourism economics forecast, the Rev Bar for Asia Pacific will remain very elusive, meaning there's still a lot of challenges that will be encountered by the many hotels. Thereby, it will affect the Rev Bar recovery. So this is a little bit of forecast, touching on the forecast for overall Asia Pacific. Thank you very much. And I hope this data dashes will be useful in order to set the discussion for this morning session for Meet the Experts in Hanoi edition. Thank you very much.